My wife stole $47,000 meant for my spinal surgery, ran off to St. Lucia with some IT guy from her job, and had the nerve to email me, "Can we talk?" Like this was a breakup, not fraud and identity theft. I woke up to the sterile, humming quiet of a hospital room, my mouth dry as dust and a dull, throbbing pain crawling up my spine. For a moment, I forgot why I was there. Then it hit me. I was supposed to be waking up with a new lease on life. A spinal fusion surgery that had taken me over 2 years to save for. My ticket to walking without pain again. But something was off. There were no wires hooked up to my chest, no four fluids. The room didn't look like post-op. It looked like a glorified observation room. I reached for the nurse call button, my hand trembling, and pressed it 3 times before someone finally came in. A middle-aged nurse with tired eyes and a clipboard stepped inside. "Oh, you're awake," she said flatly. "How are you feeling? What happened?" I croaked. "Was the surgery successful?" She blinked. "You didn't have surgery." I froze. "What?" "It was canceled yesterday morning," she said, almost like she was reciting it off a script. "I believe there was a payment issue. The paperwork shows the procedure was officially called off at 7:26 a.m. I tried to sit up too fast and winced as a sharp bolt of pain shot through my back. No. That can't be right. I wired the money last week. It was all set. I'm just relaying what's in the system," she said, already turning to leave. "You'll be discharged by noon. Someone should have contacted you already." I grabbed my phone from the tray beside me, hands fumbling as panic took hold. I opened the banking app. My stomach dropped. The surgery fund was gone. Every last cent of it, over $47,000, wiped out. My jaw went slack. I checked the transaction history. A large transfer had cleared 3 days ago, to an account I didn't recognize. No. My heart was pounding now. I called the bank, shaking, and after 15 minutes of automated messages and transfers, I finally reached a human being. The woman on the phone confirmed it. The funds had been wired manually, using my credentials. How could that happen? I demanded. I didn't authorize that. I only had one joint account with my wife. There was a pause. "Sir, it shows the transfer was initiated from your home IP address, and it was verified with your 2-factor code. Do you have any idea who else may have access?" I hung up without answering. I called Sarah. Voicemail. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. A cold, gnawing fear took root in my gut. By the time I got home, still limping from the strain that surgery should have relieved, I already knew something was wrong. The front door was locked, but it was too quiet. Sarah's shoes were gone. Her coat. A few photos had vanished off the walls, and half her clothes were missing from the closet. I stumbled through the bedroom, opening drawers, cabinets. Jewelry missing. Our shared laptop gone. Her passport was missing from the file folder in the desk drawer. I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor, unable to breathe. She was gone, and she'd taken everything with her. Not just my money, not just the surgery. She'd taken my trust, my future, my belief that we were in this life together. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, listening to the silence of our apartment, wondering how long she'd been planning this, and why I never saw it coming. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I just lay there in the dark, phone in hand, refreshing my banking app like something might change. Like I'd reload it and the balance would magically reappear. But it didn't. That $47,000 was gone. By morning, I had pulled out my laptop, an old backup I kept in the closet, and started digging. I opened the bank statements, checking everything line by line. Most of it looked normal. Bills. Grocery store runs. Then I saw it. A charge to a luxury travel site. $6,000 and change. The timestamp was from 3 days before the surgery was supposed to happen. I clicked through and got the confirmation code. With a little guesswork and password recovery, I got into the email Sarah had used. An old account she hadn't touched in years, until now. My breath caught in my throat as I scrolled. There it was. An email confirmation for a 7-day all-inclusive resort stay in St. Lucia. Beachfront bungalow. Private plunge pool. Spa credits. The whole damn fantasy. I scanned the reservation details. It was under her name, all right. But there was another name listed under guest too. Jake. I didn't know a Jake. I ran a search through her inbox. That's when I found the emails. Messages between her and the resort. Travel insurance confirmations. Even flight details. Outbound from JFK. 2 one-way tickets. Both confirmed. Both paid for with the stolen money. I felt sick. I checked her Facebook. It was still up, though she'd unfriended me. Her profile picture hadn't changed, but her newest post hit me like a slap in the face. A selfie at the resort bar. She was wearing a sundress I'd bought her last year in Miami. Her hair curled, drink in hand, sunset in the background. The caption read, "Finally living the life I deserve." In the comments, I saw his name, Jake Palmer. I clicked. His profile was public enough. Mutual friends, None. His job title said IT consultant. He looked young, maybe mid-30s, and there was a group photo from what looked like Sarah's old workplace. Suddenly, I remembered. She used to mention a Jake. Casual stories. He was funny or helpful when her computer froze. Always harmless. Apparently not. I stared at his smiling face in those pictures, thinking about how stupid I must have looked to them. Hobbling into the hospital, clueless, believing I was about to get better, while they were sipping cocktails under a palm tree with my money. My jaw tightened. I'd never felt rage like that before. Not even when I saw the empty closet. Not even when I found her passport gone. This was a whole different kind of betrayal. She hadn't just left me. She traded me in. Traded my pain, my savings, our life for a damn vacation with another man. And she didn't even have the decency to lie about it. She just disappeared. But I wasn't about to let it end there. Not after what I found. Not after seeing her smirk in that photo like she'd gotten away with it. Because if she thought she could vanish with everything we built, without consequences, she didn't know me at all. It was a week later when I got the message. A name I didn't recognize popped up in my inbox, Jake Palmer. Subject, I owe you an apology. I just stared at it. My instinct was to delete it. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but I recently found out who you are. I didn't know Sarah was married. She told me she was divorced, had been for over a year. She said she was starting over, trying to move on from a controlling relationship. I had no idea she was still with someone. I swear I didn't know. If you want to talk, I'm available. I feel like I've been lied to as much as you have. Jake. I sat back in my chair, feeling like someone had knocked the wind out of me. So he didn't know. Or at least, that's what he claimed. I didn't answer right away. I spent the next couple of hours looking through everything I had left of Sarah, old bills, notebooks, drawers I hadn't touched since she left. That's when I started finding things that made me realize Jake might be telling the truth. She'd been planning this. Buried in the back of her file cabinet was a folder labeled legal stuff. Inside were copies of bank statements from an account I didn't recognize. Credit card offers. Pre-approvals. All in my name. But I'd never seen any of it. I dug deeper. A stack of envelopes, each one from a different lender, addressed to me, only I never opened them. They'd been intercepted, hidden. One card was maxed out at $12,000. Another was overdrawn and sent to collections. It didn't make sense at first. But then I pieced it together. She'd been taking out credit cards under my name. Slowly. One at a time. Building a side account with just enough to stay under the radar. Every time I got a bonus, or we paid off a bill, she rerouted some of it somewhere else. And the inheritance? Jake mentioned that too. In his follow-up message, he wrote, she said she got a small inheritance last year. That's what she used for the vacation. I never questioned it. I mean, she spent money freely but never seemed reckless. She told me you were long gone. I didn't even know your name until this morning. An inheritance. There was no inheritance. That money came from our joint savings. From my overtime hours. From my canceled surgery. Sarah hadn't just lied to me. She built a second life on the back of my pain and sold that life to someone else like it was some fairy tale. And Jake? He was just the buyer who hadn't read the fine print. The more I uncovered, the more humiliated I felt. This wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. Cold, calculated fraud. And she had done it with the calm of someone who'd been preparing for months. I felt like I'd never known her at all. All those years, those quiet Sundays, those late-night talks about the future, it had all been a smokescreen. She wasn't starting a new life. She'd already started one, long before I ever got to the hospital. And now, I was the one left behind, staring at the wreckage she left in her wake. A couple days after Jake's message, I called him. I don't know what I expected, maybe some defensive posturing or a quick hang-up. But he answered on the second ring, sounding like a man who'd just had the rug yanked out from under him. We agreed to meet at a diner near his office. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the place was almost empty. Jake looked exhausted when I walked in, like he hadn't slept properly in days. He stood when he saw me, then awkwardly sat back down before I reached the table. I didn't waste time. How long were you seeing Sarah? Jake sighed and rubbed his eyes. About 6 months. But she told me she was divorced. Said you were some manipulative guy she escaped from. That she had nothing when she left you. I clenched my jaw. She left with 30 grand and half my personal documents. He blinked. What? I leaned back in the booth. She stole the surgery money. She cleared out the accounts. Took off without a word. Jake looked sick. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo, Sarah on a yacht, grinning in sunglasses with a champagne glass in hand. She told me she inherited money from her aunt. That she wanted to live free, without the burden of her past. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. She said you were bitter. Controlling. That you'd ruined her chances to be happy. I stared at him. Do I look like a man who just lost a war with his own wife, or someone who got blindsided? Jake held up his hands. Hey, I get it now. I was stupid. But she's really good at this. She made me believe she was starting over, clean slate, fresh life. I thought she loved me. You weren't the only one she conned. He nodded slowly, looking down. That's not all. What now? He pulled out a manila folder from his bag. I started digging after I found out the truth. She used a different name on one of the resort forms, her maiden name. When I asked her about it, she flipped. That's when I knew something was wrong. So I checked my credit report. I felt my stomach turn. Don't tell me. Yeah, he said, voice tight. She opened a credit card using my info. A couple thousand already charged. Spot treatments, flights, handbags. I buried my face in my hands. She's running the same playbook. Jake looked up. Same playbook. I nodded. I found out she opened 2 cards in my name. Took out a personal loan, too. I only realized it after going through the mail she'd tried to hide. I'm on the hook for over 20 grand. We sat in silence for a minute. The waitress came by, but neither of us was hungry. She's not just a liar, Jake said quietly. She's dangerous. I couldn't disagree. She's built a life on deception. And we were both just characters in her script. Jake looked at me like he was waiting for some plan, something to make this all make sense. But I didn't have a plan yet. I just had one hell of a mess. Thanks for meeting, I said finally, sliding out of the booth. And for being honest. He nodded. What now? I looked out the window at the street. Now? I make sure she doesn't do this to anyone else. Because Sarah didn't just steal money. She stole futures. And mine? I was ready to take it back. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I had never needed one for anything more than signing a lease or notarizing a document, but this was different. Sarah hadn't just broken my heart. She had committed fraud, identity theft, financial abuse. I was done thinking like a victim. The attorney's name was Rachel Flynn. Sharp, straight-talking, and the first person in weeks who didn't look at me like I was a fool for trusting my wife. She opened loans in your name? Rachel asked, flipping through the paperwork I'd brought in. Without your knowledge? I nodded. She stole my social security number, forged my signature on a loan application, and used my email address to access our accounts. Rachel raised an eyebrow. That's more than grounds for divorce. That's criminal. We'll file a formal police report and start documenting everything. You're going to need proof. I had already started gathering it. Every bank statement, every email Sarah had forwarded to her private account, every document I could dig out of the drawers she'd left behind. The evidence was all there. She hadn't even been that careful. Probably thought I'd be too hurt or too stupid to look. Rachel handed me a list. Start with these. Credit card statements, emails, screenshots of the vacation charges. Any messages between you and Sarah, even the ones from months ago. We need a timeline. I nodded slowly, swallowing the bitter taste in my throat. What happens if we can't find her? She didn't hesitate. Then we find her. So I did what I never imagined I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Leon. He was older, wore a windbreaker even in warm weather, and carried himself like he'd seen every kind of mess a person could make. I handed him a manila envelope with what I knew. She was last seen in Cancun with a guy named Jake. Might be using her maiden name. Here's the info I've got. Leon leafed through the pages like he was scanning a grocery list. You want her served or found? Both, I said. But start with found. Give me 2 weeks, he replied, tucking the file under his arm. You'd be surprised how sloppy people get when they think they've won. Back at home, I printed every document Rachel asked for and filed them in a binder. I labeled every section, made notes, even added tabs. I wanted this done right. No mistakes. No loose ends. This wasn't just about getting a divorce anymore. This was about making sure Sarah answered for what she'd done, to me, to Jake, and maybe others I hadn't even discovered yet. Every time I looked at the empty closet she left behind, I reminded myself, this wasn't grief. This was clarity. She wanted a clean escape. But I wasn't about to let her vanish that easily. Not anymore. At some point, anger turns into fuel. Once Leon confirmed Sarah was living in a condo in Scottsdale under her maiden name, still dipping into what was left of my money, something inside me shifted. I didn't just want justice anymore. I wanted the truth to be seen. No more secrets. No more shame. So I did the one thing I knew would get her attention. I went public. I started by writing everything down. Not just the theft or the lies, but the details. The timeline. Screenshots of our bank statements. Pictures of Sarah on vacation with Jake, paid for by the money meant for my surgery. Copies of the forged loan applications. Even the email she'd sent to my work address by accident. I didn't have a huge social media following, but I didn't need one. The post spoke for itself. I captioned it simply. What would you do if your spouse disappeared with your surgery money, left the country with another man, and opened loans in your name? Within a day, the post started to spread. Friends I hadn't heard from in years reached out. Coworkers messaged me in disbelief. I thought you two were solid, one wrote. I remember Sarah talking about how much she loved your discipline. Discipline. She stole my future and called it a fresh start. But what surprised me more were the messages from people who knew Sarah. Old college roommates. 2 former coworkers. Even a woman who said she'd once dated the same guy Sarah had before me and had a nearly identical story. "She's a chameleon," one message said. "She tells you exactly what you want to hear until you're no longer useful." I wasn't looking for sympathy, but people gave it anyway. Some commented things like, "You should have seen it coming," or "Why would you let her control your finances?" And yeah, those stung. But I let them stay. I wanted the full picture. No filters. The real shock came when Sarah's family reached out. Her cousin messaged me first. "I didn't believe it," she wrote. "But now I do. She cut off half the family last year. Said we were too negative for her new life. I'm sorry you went through this." I read that message over and over. Too negative, translation. People who saw through her. Even Sarah's own mother commented on the post. "I love my daughter, but I don't condone this. I hope you get peace." The support helped, but it didn't heal the deeper wound. People finally saw Sarah for who she was. That part felt like justice. But it didn't undo the sleepless nights, the moments I doubted my own instincts, the literal pain in my body from a surgery that still hadn't happened. No amount of likes or shares could fix that. A few days later, I took the post down. Not because I regretted it, but because I didn't want to live in that place forever. The truth was out there. And now it was Sarah's turn to live in the shadow of it. For once, she couldn't spin the story. She couldn't hide behind charm or excuses. And I finally felt something I hadn't felt in months. In control. It had been nearly 3 months since I last heard Sarah's voice. Then one night, just past midnight, an email came through with the subject line, "Please read this." The body of the email was long, too long. She poured herself across the screen in one of those half-confession, half-deflection rambles that narcissists specialize in. There were apologies, but never quite for the right things. She was sorry I felt betrayed. Sorry for how things looked. Sorry Jake turned on her after the truth came out. She blamed the stress, the pressure, her childhood, her loneliness. And near the bottom, buried between excuses, was a plea. "Can we meet? I just want to talk. Please." I stared at the screen for a long time before I responded. I agreed, but only in public. I wanted to see her face, but I didn't trust her farther than I could throw my trashed credit score. We met at a cafe downtown, neutral territory, with too many eyes around for drama. I got there early. She was late. When she finally walked in, she looked different. Not glamorous. Not glowing. Smaller somehow. Tired. She wore oversized sunglasses even though it was cloudy, but I recognized her instantly. "Hey," she said, taking the seat across from me. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Almost shaky. I didn't respond. Just waited. She pulled off her glasses and blinked at me like I was a stranger. "You lost weight," she said, like we were making small talk at a wedding. I didn't blink. "Start talking." She looked down. "Jake left. The moment he saw your post, he was done. He said I used him, and maybe I did. But I didn't mean for it to go this far. You stole my surgery money, Sarah. I was going to pay it back." "No, you weren't." She bit her lip and looked out the window like she was suddenly realizing she had nowhere else to look. I was scared. You were always so together. So careful. I felt like I didn't matter anymore. I almost laughed. "So your solution was to wipe out my bank account and flee to Mexico?" "I just wanted a reset," she whispered. "I didn't plan on Jake. He just showed up at the right time." "You planned everything." Her shoulders slumped. "He found out I was married. He flipped. Told me I made him look like a fool. You weren't the only one who got burned." I leaned in slightly. "Are you trying to make me feel sorry for you?" "No," she said quickly. Then softer, "Maybe. I don't know anymore." We sat there in silence for a long time. Finally, she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "It's not much. A few hundred. It's what I have left." I didn't touch it. "You don't get to fix this with hush money." She looked hurt, like she really thought I'd pocket it and say thank you. Then she leaned forward, her voice lowering. "I'm staying with a friend. I don't have anyone else. My credit's ruined. My name's trash now." "Sounds familiar," I said coldly. "But the difference is, I didn't deserve it." I stood. "This is the last time you'll ever see me. Whatever you think you still have over me, it's gone. You burned it. You don't get sympathy. You don't get closure. You just get to live with it." As I walked away, she called out, "Wait." But I didn't turn around. 2 days later, a mutual friend messaged me. Apparently, Sarah had reached out trying to borrow money, telling the same sob story, just with a different name plugged into the bad guy slot. Still playing the victim. Still lying. But not to me. Not anymore. The quiet after Sarah's final reach out felt different. Not empty, just still. No more mystery. No more betrayal waiting to be uncovered. Everything was out in the open, scorched and hollowed, but finally clear. I started taking care of my body again, not out of urgency, but out of respect. The surgery I needed was still waiting. The hospital confirmed they could reschedule once I had funding. That part still stung. A part of me hoped there'd be a miracle refund, or that Sarah had left some hidden money trail. But she hadn't. I called my older brother, someone I hadn't leaned on in years. His voice cracked when I told him everything. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" he asked. "Because I was ashamed. Because I thought I could fix it without admitting how bad it was. Because I didn't want to be the guy who got cleaned out by his own wife." But he didn't hesitate. He and his wife offered a loan. No strings, no judgment. Just help. It was enough to get the surgery back on the calendar. That was the first real moment of hope. The kind that didn't feel forced. I booked the new date, then started therapy, both physical and emotional. It was the therapist who said something that stuck. "You didn't lose everything. You lost the illusion. Now you get to build something real." At first, I didn't know what real looked like. I was used to filtering my decisions through Sarah. What would she want? What would make her happy? But now, I started cooking again. Just for me. Nothing fancy. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Something warm. Something that didn't come in a takeout bag. I fixed the bookshelf Sarah always hated and repainted the bedroom walls, not because I needed to, but because I wanted the space to feel like mine again. I stopped checking her social media. I blocked her number. I finally accepted that I wasn't going to get some perfect apology, some bow-wrapped moment of justice. And that was okay. Because healing wasn't loud. It was subtle. It was waking up one morning and realizing I hadn't thought about her in days. It was finding joy in a walk through the park or in a podcast that made me laugh until my stomach hurt. One day, I passed a couple at the grocery store holding hands near the cereal aisle. I expected the usual pang, jealousy, maybe bitterness. But I just smiled. Because I knew what I wanted now. Not a fantasy. Not someone who said all the right things while stealing everything behind my back. I wanted honesty. Boredom. Security. The beautiful, quiet kind of love that doesn't need to announce itself every second. I wasn't there yet, but I was on my way. The surgery went well. The pain was real, but so was the relief. I sent my brother and his wife a photo from the recovery room, groggy, thumbs up, bandages and all. He texted back, "Proud of you. This is just chapter 1. And maybe he was right. I'd been broken, used, discarded. But I wasn't done. I was rebuilding. Not out of spite. Not to prove anything. Just because I finally could.